More than 2,000 British nationals have served in the Israeli army amid the Gaza genocide, but the UK government has no systems in place to monitor if they were involved in war crimes. After we uncovered this scandal, Declassified launched a petition calling for the British authorities to introduce checks on IDF soldiers entering the UK. 20,000 of you have signed our petition so far, suggesting that this is quite a reasonable and popular demand. But pro-Israel groups have reacted to this petition very differently, claiming it's anti-Semitic and that its demands are tantamount to compiling a list of Jews. This is despite one of the most prominent signatories being Zack Polanski, the only Jewish leader of a major political party in Britain. Joining me now to discuss this is my colleague John McAvoy. John, your research is at the heart of this petition. Have you been surprised by some of the reactions to it?
Yeah, I've been astonished by some of the responses, to be honest. We've had in the Telegraph an article authored by Stephen Pollard, effectively alleging that Polanski wants to create a list of Jews. Stephen Pollard is a major media figure in the UK, former editor-in-chief of the Jewish Chronicle, subsequently editor-at-large. Before that, he worked as a parliamentary researcher for an MP in the Labour Party. So he's been, in the political and media sphere in the UK for, I think, many decades now. We've had Sarah Vine and journalist Hadley Freeman kind of suggesting or making even jokes that Polanski's campaign is akin to asking Jews to wear yellow armbands or armbands with the Star of David on them, i.e., reminiscent of the Holocaust.
And Sarah Vine, of course, is the ex-wife of Michael Gove, the former cabinet minister. And who's Hadley Freeman?
Hadley Freeman, former Guardian writer, now writes for the Sunday Times. So really quite prominent figures in the media world in the UK. So while the right-wing press in Britain has been conflating Jews everywhere with the IDF, it has simultaneously been publishing what seemed to many people like incredibly anti-Semitic caricatures of Zack Polanski, which some people on social media have said recall Nazi propaganda. One of the other incredibly concerning things that I saw on social media was somebody using the Jewish author Michael Rosen's book, We're Going on a Bear Hunt, and they changed it to Zack Polanski and Mohsin Ali with the title, We're Going on a Jew Hunt. And so kind of disgusting was this framing of the campaign and Zack Polanski's signature on it that Michael Rosen actually felt compelled to respond to this. Because here you have a Jewish children's author, you have the only Jewish leader of a major political party seemingly being caricatured themselves as anti-Semites. Something's clearly gone quite wrong here.
And these seem like quite serious attacks on Declassified's journalism, and I think some people who aren't familiar with this playbook might take this quite seriously and it might lower their opinion of Declassified. But what's been the reaction of people on social media on average, would you say?
Yeah, I think the vast majority of the British public responding to this, and international commentators as well, have basically said that this response, this furious response from Pollard and others, really amounts to anti-Semitism itself, right? Because not only are these figures conflating Jews everywhere with Israel, which is commonly and for good reason accepted as anti-Semitic, they are equating Jews everywhere with the IDF. So they're going one step further than what you might describe as classical anti-Semitism. And these are people who are doing it supposedly in the name of fighting anti-Semitism, which I think makes it even more dangerous, the way that they are trying to attack this campaign. And fundamentally, it's worth recalling that the reason that they are doing this is in effect to protect the IDF and to protect Britons who have gone to serve in an army that has been committing genocide for the past 2.5 years.
What I find so bizarre about these attacks is they're acting like we've singled out the IDF. And actually, if you look at Declassified's journalism ever since we started, we've always been investigating the issue of British nationals serving in foreign militaries that commit war crimes. My own work into the British mercenaries that went and fought in Sri Lanka in the 1980s, That led to a Met Police war crimes investigation, the first ever Met Police war crimes investigation into British mercenaries. We've done so much investigating of British nationals working for BAE Systems, the arms company that were then seconded to the Saudi Air Force during the war in Yemen and were arguably complicit in war crimes there. So the idea that we're singling out Israelis and therefore we're making a list of Jews, I just find so absurd and insulting. Do you think we've hit a nerve here in the sense that they are worried that this could lead to prosecutions of British nationals who fought in Gaza?
Yeah, I think we've certainly hit a nerve, and I think we've hit a nerve precisely because what we are calling for is the upholding of international law. Now, in January 2024, the International Court of Justice put all member states of the UN on notice that there was a plausible risk that the Palestinians in Gaza were being subjected to genocide. Shortly thereafter, the UN Commission of Inquiry re-emphasised that January 2024 ruling put member states, including Britain, on notice of their obligation to prevent and punish genocide. Now, what that should have entailed is the UK government preventing its own nationals from travelling to Israel and participating, facilitating an ongoing live genocide. The UK government did not do that. When they returned to the UK, did they investigate them? Did they even collect any data on who was going and who was coming back? No. So the UK government has done virtually nothing by way of its international obligations to prevent this genocide. As a matter of fact, when the F-35 case went to court, the Al-Haq case, what the UK government argued in court was that its obligation to prevent genocide is only triggered once a competent authority has declared that a genocide has taken place. What that effectively means is that the UK government withdrew altogether from any obligation to prevent genocide, because what's the point in preventing something once it's already been proven to have happened, right? So the UK government has effectively inverted its obligations under international law when it comes to the genocide in Gaza.
And we spoke to Andrew Feinstein, the veteran anti-apartheid activist, to get his view on the backlash to this petition. This is what he had to say.
To suggest that these people should now have to wear yellow armbands referencing the yellow star that my mother had to wear as a Holocaust survivor in Vienna trivializes what happened to the Jews during the Second World War and attempts to equate a call for justice, for participation in a genocide, with being victims of a Holocaust. This is deeply, deeply offensive.
So that was Andrew Feinstein there. And John, you've mentioned that some of the media attacks are trying to claim that the petition calls for compiling a list of Jews. For people who haven't actually read the petition themselves, what does it actually call for?
Yeah, it makes three very simple demands, firmly in the public interest and in line with international law, which is A, just collect data on who's going to participate in a live genocide and who from the UK is returning. 2, to implement a disclosure agreement. So when they return to the UK, if they have fought for the IDF, they disclose to the authorities that they have done so. And 3, to ask the UK government to conduct robust and independent investigations in line with domestic and international law with regards to potential complicity in war crimes and crimes against humanity.
And have you seen similar demands made in other countries?
Yes, so the Hague Group, which is a group of 40 states that have formed together to pressure, international law to be upheld and for justice for Palestinians, have called for these exact measures led by the Colombian government of Gustavo Petro and the South African government as well, which led the initial ICJ complaint. And since we've launched our petition, we've seen a politician in Australia also make these very same demands.
There are at least 502, as at March of last year, who have been potentially engaging in war crimes or crimes against humanity in Gaza.
So I think one of the concerns for pro-Israel figures, both in the UK and elsewhere, is that these kinds of petitions, demands, become transnational. Because as we revealed in our previous article that showed 2,000 British Israelis had served in the IDF amid the genocide, it wasn't just Britons. I mean, there was many thousands from the US, Germany, Russia, and many other, France as well. They were the main countries, I believe. Yeah, and I mean, the whole reason that, you know, we have intervened in this issue, organisations like the Hindley Art Foundation have intervened on this issue, is because states, the UK and elsewhere, are not upholding international law. So it's going into the hands of media organisations, legal organisations like HRF, or lawyers to issue private arrest applications under universal jurisdiction legislation.
And as we've long pointed out at Declassified, the UK has no law on the statute books preventing British people serving in foreign forces, which partly creates this situation that we're in. And there's also no monitoring when we've done freedom of information requests to the UK government about the number of Brits serving in the IDF. Initially they said they didn't know, and then they came back with a sort of best guess, which was around 100. And then when an Israeli lawyer made a request in Israel to the IDF, it turned out the true number was actually more than 2,000. And so now the question is, well, who were those 2,000 people and what did they do?
Yeah, exactly. And while it seems that there's absolutely no political will in the UK to not only investigate these individuals, but even figure out who they are, you can see the kind of two-tier policing when it comes to domestic opposition to the genocide. For example, groups like Palestine Action, the first direct action organisation in British history to be prescribed as a terrorist organisation. Next week, there are 4 activists who may be sentenced as terrorists, the first time that protest-related activity may be sentenced as terrorists. So you can see how the British state is putting a lot of resources, a lot of pressure, and a lot of effort into prosecuting activists in the UK, while at the same time, seemingly no effort is being put into investigating individuals who may have participated in a live stream genocide.
Thanks again, John, for all the research and investigations that you've done into this issue. If you want to support independent investigative journalism, please head to declassifieduk.org/join, where you can become a member. And our petition is still open for signatories. So if you'd like to sign it, the link is in the description below. Thanks for watching.